Metaphysical Poets. This is a playlist that we have been running on the Pratyancha channel. We have discussed poets like John Donne, Andrew Marvell, George Herbert, and today I bring another poet to you in the series, Henry Vaughan. We discussed George Herbert in one of our earlier videos, and I said that there is a strain to metaphysical poetry which is devotional in nature. Henry Vaughan is also a devotional poet. He talks about God, the cosmos, angels, and he also speaks about the fact that we have to become one with the Almighty, we have to worship Him. Henry Vaughan was mentored by George Herbert, and his time period is 1621 to 1695. The piece that we are going to be discussing today is The Retreat. Now, the moment I say the retreat, the first thing that comes to our mind is that a place where you go to unwind, a place where you go to rest, a place which offers you some sort of a different experience from your daily tenor of life. But the word retreat also means going back to something. Both these meanings are manifest in the piece that we are going to read here. And the conceit here is, the metaphysical conceit here is that while everyone in life wants to go ahead, everyone in life has a forward march in their minds, the poet says that I would want to go back to my childhood. I would want to go back to my infancy, because it was then that I was one with the Almighty. It was then I had a wonderful understanding of the world. It was then that I wasn't separated from the wonderful energy that runs this world. Now we shall see what the poet says in the lines of this poem. The Retreat by Henry Vaughan. Happy those early days when I shined in my angel infancy, before I understood this place appointed for my second race, or taught my soul to fancy aught but a white celestial thought. Happy those early days, the days of my infancy, when I shined in my angel infancy. He's imagining that an infant is like an angel. There's an angelic light about him. There's an angelic character about him. There is nothing which is negative about an infant. And he says, I was very happy when I was this angelic infant. And before I understood this place, the earth, the world that we live in, appointed for my second race. Now, the adult life he calls a second race. The earth is a second race, and the first race is basically when I was one with the Almighty. Perhaps I was in heaven then, because I and the God were not different. So this is my second race. My adulthood, my life that I have lived after my infancy is my second race, and it was appointed to happen on the planet Earth or in the world that we live in. And that time I did not know that this is going to happen to me. And before I taught my soul to fancy anything, aught, A-U-G-H-T is anything. Before I taught my soul to fancy anything but a white celestial thought. In my mind, there was no thought at all of the world around me, but there was a white celestial light, celestial, heavenly. There was a very pure light thought in my mind, which basically was the light of being close to God. And this divine thought was the only thing I had. There was no other human or mortal thought in my mind. Let's look ahead. When yet I had not walked above a mile or two from my first love, and looking back at that short space, could see a glimpse of his bright face. He says that my infancy was the time when I had not walked away from my first love. First love, my God. And this is denoted by the fact that when he says his, he uses a capital H, which is to say he is referring to Almighty. So this was the time when I was still in heaven, when I was still in heavenly light, when I was still very close to God, and I hadn't really walked a mile or two from him. I wasn't separated from him. I hadn't stepped into adulthood. I was still an infant, and I was still very much one with God. And then I could see his bright face. I just had to turn my head and look at his bright face. He was still in my view. God was still in my view. When on some gilded cloud or flower my gazing soul would dwell an hour, and in those weaker glories spy some shadows of eternity. Gilded cloud, a cloud is something which is dark in color, which is grey in color. Why would he say gilded? It means that it has come in front of the sun and you see that lining which is shining, and therefore there's a gold sort of a feel to this lining of the cloud. We say silver lining. Here he uses the term gilded, and he might mean gold or silver. And there was a shine that I saw to the cloud, and when I saw this beautiful scene that there is a cloud in the sky and it has a silver lining to it, I could think of it or think about it for an hour. I was lost in these small joys of life. Life felt so beautiful with these small joys around. Or my gazing soul would dwell an hour on this or on a flower. Sometimes I could look at the beauty of a flower and really dwell in it, really revel in it. And in those weaker glories, spy some shadows of eternity. And I understand that these were not the biggest experiences one could have, and these were but manifestations of the Godhead, be it a gilded cloud or be it a flower. But in that, I could see the shadows of eternity. I could still understand life philosophically as I looked at these scenarios, as I experienced these experiences. Before I taught my tongue to wound my conscience with a sinful sound, or had the black art to dispense a several sin to every sense, but felt through all this fleshy dress bright shoots of everlastingness. So my infancy was, before I taught my tongue to say some things which actually can bring a lot of pain to my conscience, because I'm producing a sinful sound. I'm doing something wrong with my words. So even before I became conscious of these things, that what is wrong, what is right, am I saying something which may hurt someone or myself, I wasn't conscious of these things. I was just in this beautiful, divine, celestial presence. And before, I had the black art to dispense a several sin to every sense. He says, not only have I now learnt in my adulthood to commit sins with my tongue, but every sense of mine, be it the sense of hearing, the sense of touch, the sense of taste, or the sense of smell, adulthood is such that it teaches you to commit a sin with every sense. And all this in my infancy wasn't just there. I was this wonderful child with an angelic light about me. And I have learned all this only in my adulthood. So the black art, he calls it, of committing sin. This is what we do when we become adults. And then he says that through my fleshy dress, my human body, I just felt that there was incredible happiness shooting out of every pore of my being. Bright shoots of everlastingness. I was in this eternal happiness, in this eternal peace when I was a child, when I was an infant. It's only in adulthood that I learned to use my tongue in a wrong manner and to use all my senses to commit sins with them. So the poet is not very happy about adulthood. He really yearns that joy that he felt as an infant when he was one with the Almighty. Let's look ahead now. Oh, how I long to travel back and tread again that ancient track, that I might once more reach that plain where first I left my glorious train. I really long to travel back. I wish I could go back to my infancy and tread again that ancient track, that I might once more reach that plain. I really want to go back and reach that glorious, angelic, heavenly plain where I left my glorious train. And this is where I first left my infancy, my childhood, and I became an adult. I long to go back to that time. Then he says, from whence the enlightened spirit sees that shady city of palm trees. But ah, my soul with too much stay is drunk and staggers in the way. So he says, I long to go back to the infancy, my childhood, from where I could see the shady city of palm trees. He's referring to heaven, or he's referring to the fact that he could basically be not as aware as he is in his adulthood, but look at everything in that divine light, and I want to go back there. But now my soul is very tired, and it is drunk and it staggers. I've reached an adulthood, and having committed so many sins, having done so many wrongs, it is very difficult. It staggers in the way. I can't find my way back to that wonderful experience of my infancy. Some men a forward motion love, but I by backward steps would move. And when this dust falls to the urn, in that state I came, return. So he says that most men would say, let's move ahead, let's go ahead in life, but I would really want to go back. And this is why the title of the poem is Retreat. And like I said, it has both notions, retreat, going back in time, and retreat as a place which offers you rest, which offers you peace, which offers you enjoyment. And here he says, it was my infancy which offered me this divine cocooning light. So some men a forward motion love, but I by backward steps would move. And when this dust falls to the urn, dust falling to the urn, when I am dead and my ashes are in an urn is a pot, and that time I think I should come to this feeling of going back to my infancy. I would finally have returned. It is not possible in my living life because my soul is very drunk, it staggers. As a living adult, I cannot do it. It's only death that shall bring me close to this state which I was in when I was an infant. So this is devotional metaphysical poetry. I would suggest that you go and watch the Herbert video, because that also is devotional metaphysical poetry. The poem is entitled Puli. That is also in the Metaphysical Poets playlist. We shall continue to add to this playlist. Keep following it, keep watching the videos. Thank you very much.